Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
We are so excited to have our friend Marcus with us, and we both love to introduce him because we see him in different lights. So I'm going to say Marcus is a recovery coach. He's a creative, soon to be podcaster. And of course, these are his words, all around nerd.
Yes.
Kevin?
And he's also one of the guys I took the class with and got to know him. And that's how I found out we both were so into sci-fi and all the different convention and nerdy stuff. So we share the nerd side.
The nerd factor.
And not just sci-fi, but also fantasy.
Fantasy, yes.
Yeah, I love it all. I'm one of those guys who has upset people by saying "May the 4th be with you" on May 4th, and I give them the Vulcan salute, and it just their minds blow whenever I do something like that.
And of course, he has
you're
the
messing
posters.
with Trekkies and Star Wars, kid.
Exactly.
And then he's got the Super Mario poster behind him.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a video podcast, but I have a Mario Brothers 3 poster. I have a Hylian shield from A Legend of Zelda. I have a metal poster depicting Ness from Earthbound. I have some really nice light-up swords that my wife made for me out of resin. And my office here is just a celebration to all the nerddoms that I
Celebration of nerdness. I love that.
Well, we're so grateful to have you on, Marcus. We've been trying for a long time. You're a busy guy, but we like to just kind of have you tell your story, and then we'll have some conversation around it afterwards. So do you want to just hop in? And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it did take a while to get here. A lot of it was due to situations out of my control, but I'm just glad that we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great to see you guys again.
Yeah.
So about Marcus and my story. Since this is a podcast geared towards people who have survived from trauma, sexual abuse, and that kind of stuff, one of the things that I've had some people push back on is that I did experience some very subtle sexual abuse when I was a kid. And I've even had a mentor tell me that, no, that wasn't really sexual abuse. That was just like early childhood exposure to pornography. Yet when I look at it, it really had an impact on me. It was a family member who introduced me to pornography. He found it was a Penthouse or a Playboy magazine or something while we were at a grandfather's place, and he brought it out to show it to me and my twin brother. I can still vividly recall the very first pornographic image that I saw in that magazine. That's stuck with me. And that same family member later on, once he started hitting puberty, we would do this thing where over the summer, we always wanted to go camping, but parents still needed to work. Money wasn't always there. So we would often camp in our backyard. And there was this one time we had the camp set up. It happened to be one of those nights when my parents remembered to turn off the sprinklers so we didn't get rained on in the morning. That did happen more than once. And my twin brother and I went into the house like to get something to eat or use the bathroom or something like that. And when we came back, this family member was in the tent and he had it zipped up. And as we were getting ready to come inside, he's like, "Oh, wait, hold on, you guys. I want to show you something." And so we go inside the tent And he's like, look what I just figured out to do. And he starts pulling on his penis and it starts getting erect. Nothing happened beyond that, yet that unlocked a curiosity inside of me. I'd never seen something like that happen before. That led into a fascination with pornography when I turned 12 or 13 years old, when I was in the third grade. I experienced a lot of bullying growing up. And I always go back to my 12 or 13, that time when I was in the sixth grade, as when the bullying happened, but it actually even happened earlier than that, like back in the fourth and the fifth grade. I was the only boy in the school that had long hair. And that happened because my twin brother couldn't handle the bullying, so he cut his long hair. For some reason, there was some stubborn streak inside of me that did not want to cut my long hair. I loved it. I wasn't going to let these other people tell me how my appearance needed to be and everything. And I stuck with it. And yet, me being in a very conservative place here in southeastern Washington back in the 90s, and I was the only boy that had long hair, that clearly made me homosexual or a girl. And I was called every single homophobic name in the book. I was not accepted by my peers, with the exception that the girls in my class were the ones who accepted me. All of the boys didn't accept me. I even had some teachers who didn't accept me. Really? Just because of who I was and how I was. It was unfortunate that during this time, I didn't even feel safe in my own home, because some of the bullying would come from my family as well. And I felt so alone, so isolated. Today, I know that what I have is a gift of empathy. Mm-hmm. Growing up, I didn't know that's what it was. And everyone identified it as me being a crybaby. And I received messages a lot growing up that I had to figure out all of it by myself. When I was hurt, I had to deal with it. A story that I've shared is, I don't even know how old I was, but I'm going upstairs in the split level home, and I was probably crying because I didn't get my turn playing a game on the Super Nintendo, and I was crying to my mom because of this slight that was made against me. That's the best I can conceive of this, because that did happen. And I go up to the kitchen where my mom is preparing some food, and I'm crying, and I'm telling her all this kind of stuff, and she turns around and says, "Come here and I'll give you something to cry about." And I know a lot of people have heard those messages. What I internalized from that message is, my pain that I'm experiencing right now isn't valid, and you're not going to help me with it. And so I just internalized everything. I ended up becoming the most depressed in middle school and in high school. I became such a lone wolf. I was so cut off from everyone because of all of these experiences. And that was also when I found pornography. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And pornography became that incredible coping mechanism that made me feel so much better. Mm-hmm. And as I have been doing my own recovery, this last May, I hit 8 years of freedom from my unwanted sexual behavior. And I never thought. I wrestled with this for 2 decades, and I never thought that I would get this far. And when I look back on a lot of the pornographic images that I would search for, there was always these themes of being pursued, being desired, being accepted. And it was trying to meet this really deep need inside of me that I wasn't getting from a lot of people around me. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, when I was a freshman in high school, I was about 15 years old. My parents divorced. And because of everything that was going on, I was the only one who didn't see it coming. I was so checked out. Both of my brothers are like, dude, how did you not know this was this? We all saw the signs that this was coming up, and I didn't see it coming. That was when my unwanted sexual behavior kicked into high gear. It was the best coping mechanism I had. It worked better than food. If you guys have ever seen me in person, you'll recognize that food has been a constant struggle for me, and I'm working on it. But all of this 2-decade-long struggle with pornography, compulsive masturbation, that almost destroyed my marriage within the first month.
Mm.
It was perpetuated because of what happened when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I had that family member find that adult magazine and introduce it to me. And then that same family member discovered masturbation, introduced it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sexual abuse? A lot of people argue whether that is or not. All I know is I wouldn't have had some of the struggles that I had today. I mean, as soon as the internet came around, I was probably screwed anyways.
Yeah.
Yet I might have been saved a little bit from this. Instead of it being a 20-year journey, maybe it would have been less. Maybe it wouldn't have been so severe. I don't know. But for me, it kind of was a subtle form of abuse because I just wasn't prepared for what I saw and how that was going to impact me. And I had no one that I could turn to in order to talk about it.
You know, I'm curious, Marcus, because you are a recovery coach. And so when it comes to you, you're like, was it? But if somebody came to you with that, what would you say to them?
If I had someone come to me with that.
Yeah, you're coaching someone and they're like, well, I don't know if it was abuse. What would you say?
I'm very careful not to just suggest something to someone. I want them to find their own answers. I would absolutely say that it is worth considering that this actually was abusive in nature. And I think that's one of the tricky things about it. For me, absolutely, it was a very subtle form of sexual abuse.
Because your brain isn't developed, and how are you? You can't unsee that.
Yeah.
I can't unsee it. I can't process what's happening in my body. I had no idea what was going on in my brain, in my loins, and I mean everything was just. I was flooded with something that I didn't understand, and at the same time, there was also that aspect of it where it's like, oh, but I also feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you guys. My parents broke the mold of having the sex talk. I shared with so many people that I love how so many people think you just have one talk about sex and sexuality and that's enough, because you don't just have the math talk. You don't have the history talk or anything like that.
Yeah.
And yet it's like, did you have the sex talk? Mm-hmm. My parents actually opened it up for me and my brothers to ask them questions. And we did this, like, if not monthly, like at least once a quarter. They would sit us down and be like, do you guys have any questions for us about sex? They didn't really bring anything to the table other than trying to answer our questions and then go through the whole purity culture concept of you need to remain pure until you're married. You know, you guys need to remain virgins and all that kind of stuff. And it was unfortunate because I know that my parents were really trying. And yet by that point, I didn't trust them. I didn't trust them to bring my hurts, my hangups. I remember having a conversation. It was me and my twin brother because we both were wrestling with this. We knew it was a problem. We discovered masturbation around the same time. And we were talking with our dad one time. I remember he came in, the lights in the bedroom were turned off, the door, only the light from the hall coming into the room was what we had. And the best that we had to describe it was that we were dry humping. And we felt really bad about it. And my dad would clarify, and he's like, okay, you know that dog that we have that's fixed that keeps humping your cousin whenever he's around? That's dry humping. And he's like, this is what you guys are doing. And he told us, he's like, what you guys are doing is natural. What you guys are doing, it's completely normal. You know, when you get older and you get married and your wife is pregnant, you can't have sex with her for 9 months. What are you going to do? Well, first of all, that's like, honestly, really awesome advice, but not necessarily for the age that I was. I wasn't thinking about marriage. I wasn't thinking about having kids. And even though my dad said it's okay what you're doing, the thing that I couldn't wrestle with is whenever I did that, I always felt so bad afterward. Mm-hmm. Oh, the shame that I experienced from that was awful. And so there was a part of me that was like, my mom and dad are asking, hey, You guys have any questions for us about sex? No, because I don't trust you guys. You guys gave me a bad answer last time because you said it's okay, and yet every single time it felt so wrong. How could it be okay if it felt that wrong? And yet I couldn't get away from it either. It was so frustrating.
So what sent you on a recovery journey? What was it that you went, I don't want to do this. I want to get help. What was the pivot for you?
Oh, the pivot for me. And this is so sad to say. I wish that the pivot for me was my wife in tears wailing in the bedroom of our apartment after she caught me viewing pornography. Because I was one of those who believed the lie that, oh, as soon as I'm married and I have someone I can have sex with, this isn't going to be a problem. No, that absolutely was not the case for me. I wish that was where I pivoted. Yet at that time, I really didn't know what I could do. I sought therapy. And unfortunately, I worked with a therapist that didn't specialize in this area. I just got better at hiding it. And I tried accountability. I tried having people that I could call. I had no idea about how accountability works. And I just kept waiting for them to get in touch with me when I'm in a bad place, not realizing, no, it's my job to call them. That unhealthy expectation of what accountability is. The true pivot came when someone that I was very close to, who had this exact same issue with someone that I trusted, invited me to his church for this thing called Conquer. And I'd never heard of it before. And in true porn addict mentality, it was about an hour before I was going to leave to go to my friend's church to watch the very first video of this, 6 or 8 DVD series. I decide, you know what? I'm going to go masturbate one more time because this is probably going to be the last time that I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those rare guys where that literally was the last time I did that. My story is very different from a lot of people where as soon as I started this journey just over 8 years ago, I did not go back. Unfortunately, I just picked up some other maladaptive coping mechanisms like video games and food, and I even got pretty close with alcohol several times. Yet I never went back to my sexual behavior. And that started this journey of finally having something where it seemed like it was working. I took that to the church that my wife and I eventually attended, and they had their own recovery groups. I joined that one. I co-led a Conquer group at this church, and then I broke off to lead my own. And I did that for 4 years. I was leading men's recovery groups in this church. I did that until my wife and I had experienced levels of spiritual abuse while we were there, and we chose to leave. And it was right around that time, I think it was only like 3 months or so after we left that church, that I was listening to the Pure Desire podcast, the guys who make the Conquer series and everything. And I heard about this guy named Drew Boa and Husband Material. I kind of liked what he had to say, listened to his podcast. And then I ended up getting into the Husband Material curriculum and in the community. And then my growth was exponential from there because I started getting curious about my story. I started getting curious about what's really driving this behavior. Because for so long, I thought that my porn use was the problem, not realizing that it was a poor solution to another problem. And that was all of these experiences growing up where I felt alone, I felt unwanted, I felt undesirable, I was shamed. Those were the real problems. And this was just trying to help me feel better from all of it. Then I started getting into my own experiences and finding that this is what needs to be healed. Once this starts being restored and I start being a more confident person, having a better self-esteem, having love for myself, forgiving the people that caused so much pain in my life, having difficult conversations with family members, and being able to start restoring these relationships, I didn't need to have the porn in my life anymore. Now, that doesn't mean it still doesn't creep in, but I have so much more that I can rely on where I don't need to go back to it. And that's what I'm really thankful for.
Wow. I'm still considering what you were saying earlier, that some people might question, or you've had people question whether or not you were abused. And it's a matter of viewpoint, what exactly entails sexual abuse. But when there's trauma that causes this disturbance in your life that affects you for the rest of your life, it doesn't matter how you label it. It's trauma. It's what did this to you. And so I think there's almost an element of shame in being traumatized, but not feeling like anyone gets that trauma because everyone else thinks it's not trauma. It's just initiation. It's a matter of, becoming a man. But for you, it was trauma. It was not healthy. It was not how you wanted to be introduced to sexuality, your sexuality. And so that's how it affected you all your life, but no one else gets it. But because no one else gets it, you have this shame of, I'm different than anyone, but no one understands me.
Oh, that's my story. I have felt so different from everyone for so long that it was more natural for me to just isolate, and I was buying into a lie that whole time.
Yeah.
Well, what stood out to me was the confusion. You're feeling bad, but your dad's going, hey, it's cool.
Yeah.
And, a little kid, he's needing some guidance and he's not, and that you couldn't trust them with that. And it just shows how here, these little kids that things happen to, and they're trying to figure it out with their child mind. And it's impossible to make any sense of it.
It is. And even as we grow and we mature, there are still things that we can't wrap our heads around. I mean, this is a relatively new story. I've only shared it with a very small handful of people. And it's going to be showing up on a Husband Material podcast, but you guys might get this out before he gets it out. And that is, there was a time after my parents divorced, I was about 15, where I had a thought that, because a story that I heard was my mom always wanted a daughter. And my parents wanted to have 4 kids. But as soon as kid 2 and 3 came in a 2-for-1 deal, my dad was like, nope, I'm done with this. I can't handle this anymore. 2 kids at one time is too much. And he actually went and got a vasectomy. And my mom cried the entire time because she still wanted to have that one kid. She really wanted to have that girl. And there was a responsibility that I took on, that I was the last chance because I was the last child. And my mom never got to have that daughter. And so at the age of 15, I even had thoughts that if only I could have been the daughter that my mom wanted, or been the daughter that my family was hoping for, that maybe I could have saved my parents' marriage. You want to talk about confusion?
Yeah. What a burden they put upon you. I mean, and a lot of people don't understand the burden that comes on kids when their parents get divorced, and they wonder if they're the cause or if they could have done something differently so things would have been fixed. I know I wondered why my father left at such a young age.
Yeah. And just the egocentric nature of kids, the world revolves around them. So if something good happens, it was because they did something good. If something bad happens, it's because they did something bad. Again, a teenager at 15 years old, I still had those thoughts. And here I am, 39 years old this month.
Oh.
It wasn't, if this was around 15, it took me 13 years to speak that to anyone. I never shared it with anyone.
Wow.
And I wrestled with that for a long time.
Yeah.
Which then would make things even more bizarre for me, just in like an identity area, because it's like, well, maybe I can still be that daughter, but you know what? I'm still attracted to women. Does that make me a lesbian? What is wrong with me? I just don't know.
Do you think there's a connection between having long hair and in subconsciously even thinking this is the girl, like thinking maybe that, do you think that was connected? I don't know.
I imagine that there was a connection, that even though I did not say focus a whole lot on it, subconsciously, I mean, everyone calling me a girl, everyone calling me gay, calling me a queer, everything. There probably was a part of me that was like, you know what? This must be true. This must be true. I mean, I heard from both of my parents that someday I would make someone a good wife.
You're
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
And I have wrestled again. Lori, you have helped me a lot in self-confidence as I have been working on this, developing my own business and trying to come up with this podcast and everything. My self-confidence and my self-esteem was shot for years. And you take a look at these questions that I was asking, you take a look at some of these experiences that I had. I never had anyone like full on abuse me sexually, but my body was still the target of a lot of people's negative attention, whether due to my weight, due to how I chose to dress, due to how I kept my hair. It was a constant and still has been a struggle. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I finally came to terms with the fact that I'm balding, because I still like my long hair. I still want to have it, but I don't have much up top anymore to do anything with. And everything I still have is getting, wiry and everything. Not much you can do with that. And I still wanted to kind of be that person. And then I started hating God, because it's like, why would you create me with this genetic makeup just to take all of this away from me when it was something that I was going to just enjoy? And it was only about 2 years ago that I finally accepted that. And I'm still working on just my own body image and my own self-esteem, just being okay with who I am, because this is me. And I'm getting to the point where I love myself. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy. And, I'm so glad you shared that, Marcus, for two reasons. One is, Kevin and I just think you're amazing and awesome. And so to hear you say that, it makes me a little sad, but also knowing all the hard work you've done. But also, I myself have struggled with recognizing that, so that I wouldn't hate everybody else. I recognized deep down I was hating God. And it was affecting my behavior. It was affecting my thoughts, but it wasn't up front in my brain. I didn't know that's what I was doing. But even it touched a little bit. Kevin wanted to talk about awe and wonder. And, I had to process that, because I'm like, I still struggle with that God of awe and wonder. Because, I've recognized and I've let go of being mad at God and recognized that he's not the perpetrator. But just that little kid mind doesn't know how to sort it out. Now you're an adult and you're still, that little kid's still trying to figure things out. And I've had a lot of therapy. I'm a life coach, but I think it's those layers. And I think that's what I've heard in you is these layers. You start to get some help, and then you got with husband material, and then you really got curious about your story. And, and I love it that you're not like, hey, I'm done. You're like, okay, there's more. I'm going to keep growing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even close to being done. And the way that I look at it is, so long as I'm not pushing up daisies, I've still got more to do. I still have more to learn. I still have more that I can grow in. You guys, well, I think Lori, you know a little more, because this came up in the legacy coaching. I had to apologize to you because it was the second program that I was working with you in, and it seemed like all hell was just going loose in my life. Everything was going wrong, and it's like, all right, let's see where everyone's at. It's like, I feel like I can't even get myself to a 2 right now. I feel like I'm just skirting a 1 over here, and it's like, this is not me. I'm not usually this humdrum kind of, oh man, everything is just going wrong kind of guy. Yet there was that season. I'm still in a season where it's like everything was going wrong. And just talking about my own recovery and how much I have grown, my wife and I have been going through a mental health crisis in this house. It really started coming to a head at the end of April. And here we are getting towards the end of June at the time of this recording. We're still in the thick of it. We're still having to deal with anxiety, with irrational fears, possible OCD. There's just so much stuff that is going on, and it has been exhausting. It has been draining, and I have not been shy in admitting that I'm so glad that this happened now, because even if it happened like 5 years ago, let alone if this started coming up or like before I started working my own recovery, I probably would have bailed on my wife. And I would have said, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I'm out. And yet I have found myself, because of my own journey of becoming curious and extending compassion and grace to myself, to the clients that I work with, to people that I just interact with, that I've been able to do the same thing with her and help her through the darkest season of her life since she was 15 years old. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for how much I have grown and how much I've matured, because I can be that husband who is literally taking those vows to the grave, that I am with you for better or for worse. We're in a for worse time, and I'm still here, and I still love her to death. I love her to pieces. She is the best thing that's happened to me. And she's been with me every step of the way on this journey. And now I get to turn around and reciprocate that and be with her on this journey through her anxiety.
Into that.
You know what has amazed me is I knew you were going through rough times, and I loved it that you showed up and you let us be a part of that. And I know that wasn't easy, but also I recognize what you said, that you didn't recognize that it was empathy. That gift is probably what is also giving you the compassion and, you know, what you need, because you have that sweet spirit of not bailing, of being like, we're in this together. And I love that. And I loved it that you showed up. And not only that, you were honest. And it's easy for people to be like, well, the whole class is at a 4. I'm going to be at a 4, you know, and you were willing to say, I'm not a negative, but I'm on the low end.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
There were some times I felt like I should have verified myself at a negative, but you didn't give me the option, Lori.
Yeah, no. I have boundaries.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that you shared your story. And I think someone listening is probably feeling a lot of relief right now, because maybe they thought these things happened, but they didn't matter because they weren't qualified in a certain way. And so I wonder if you or Kevin can talk about that a little, because I think with men, it's a little different. And so I think in this situation that this is really valid. And I want people to understand that it's worth telling the story, that it's worth looking into.
Well, I think a part of sexual abuse when you're young is the confusion. You don't understand what is happening. And in your case, even though it wasn't sexual abuse, it was that confusion of not understanding what is happening to you. You know, you're seeing these images that no one's prepared you for. And at your age, you know, you were so young. We talked about this last week about losing your innocence. You lost your innocence to those images at an age when you should not have been exposed to something like that. And because of that, it affected you. But again, no one really considered it abuse because you weren't hurt. You were just, you know, it was like an initiation. This is what sex is about. But you weren't prepared for it. It wasn't the right time. So because of that, you were affected in a way that changed your life.
Yeah. And earlier today, I was even recording a podcast talking about this exact same thing, about the value of your story and how important it is to share. And it's the second podcast I have recorded for my own, and I already broke down in tears while I was recording this one. That's how it is. That's how important it is. Because our story, just as I'm sharing this, a lot of these aspects of the story are new to some people, some of them. Others have heard over and over. I have had plenty of opportunities to share this story with many people. I mean, I was known as an evil twin as well. That's a story I didn't even get into. That's another one that I've worked through and I've processed. Whenever I have shared my story, it's never pushed people away. In fact, it has connected me to other people. And if someone listening to this, if you're listening to this and you're hearing my story and you're like, wow, this is like, you're almost putting words to what's happened to me, or it's like, wow, this guy, he's brave enough to get out there and share these things, this story that he didn't even talk about for 13 years. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling a bond between me and you, that's the value of sharing your story. We relate to each other through these hardships and through our victories. That's one of the most important things in our own recovery, because we are hurt in community, and it's in community we're going to find healing. Yeah. And that's example. And that's why I was, like you were saying, Lori, I was showing up and I'm going to be me. Yeah. You guys, I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to put a mask on. That's not me. I don't do that anymore. I did that for so long and it never made me feel included. Here I am taking the mask off and it's like, this is me, battered, bruised, scarred, and I'm still here.
Yeah, that's how you're connecting, is by being you and being honest and true about your story. And that's how we understood that even though you were going through so much, you were going to show up and do your part. And also you're an inspiration to all of those who are listening that are going through what you went through, but haven't gotten to that point of getting the self-care and getting the self-esteem back, falling in love with yourself again.
And one thing you said was, it was easier to isolate. And, I hope that people will see that reaching out, asking for help, sharing their story, that, like you said, I took off the mask and, what? People did like me. It's almost like they didn't like me with the mask, and then I, warts and all, and they're like, hey, we really like you. And so, it just, that's what Kevin and I have seen over and over when people share their story. And, some people have shared things for the first time on the show, and there's such freedom. And I think that that's what we want. If we were to say the one thing we want from this is we want people to know that if they share their story, they can get free.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It wasn't until I started sharing my story and being honest with what I've been through and where I've come from that I legitimately found healing and found freedom.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true for so many.
Yeah. And like you said, had you not walked through your recovery, you might not have been able to handle what you're going through now. And it's like, just when we get free doesn't mean life's easy. It means we handle the hard things in a more mature, better way, because number one, we love ourselves. And that is huge. That is so huge, to be able to look in the mirror and be okay with what you see.
Exactly. And one of the things I tell my clients over and over as we're having these conversations is this problem is not going to go away just because you start finding healing. The difference is you're developing skills and tools to rely on instead. The only reason why I've been able to support my wife as well as I have is because I have been very, very intentional about self-care. I have allowed myself the opportunity to relieve the stress that I'm experiencing. I've allowed myself the time to invest in myself, to do things that are going to give me life, because my wife is taking so much of me in her hurting, in her fear, that I can't allow myself to run out. So I take care of myself so I can be there for her. And one of the things that I always did to take care of myself in the days of my addiction was I turned to my addiction, because that was trying to invest in me. The problem was it was just causing a lot of pain on the back end of it.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing that you recognize that pain at such an early age. When your father was telling you, it's all it's all right. It's all good. You recognize, no, this isn't all right for me. There's something about this that is giving me shame, that's making me feel bad about myself. I know this is wrong somehow. And yet no one was guiding you. No one was giving you a way, a means, or some understanding of what you were going through.
Yeah.
You had to find that on your own, unfortunately.
We always tell
some years later.
Yeah, we always tell people, find someone safe, get a counselor, get a coach, and you're a recovery coach. So how does somebody reach you if they're like, it's time?
So they can go to my website, which is betweenthecoverscoaching.com. And I know some people are like, wait, Between the Covers Coaching? I've had some people ask me, it's like...
That sounds a little bit inappropriate.
It's like, is it like sex coaching or something like that? And no, I just want to clear the air. I could not get this name out of my head. I love it. I realize it has that double entendre meaning to it. But Between the Covers Coaching, what we do is we get into the pages of your story. We get between the covers of your story to find what's happened, what needs to be healed, and then we start working on finding the healthy ways to get those needs and desires met.
I like
so
that.
betweenthecoverscoaching.com, best way to get in touch with me. I even have some free resources on there, and I've already created a page for my podcast, which is going to be the Between the Covers podcast, and I will start uploading episodes of my podcast when it's ready, and I am planning on launching it next month.
Which will be July.
Yeah, I'm planning on launching it in July. It's a bit of a lofty goal right now, but I think I'm up for the challenge.
And the reason it's a lofty goal is because he has a coach that won't let him launch until he has 10 in the bucket. I am so excited for your podcast, and I'm really proud of you, and you have pressed through, and I know it is going to touch so many lives. And when you launch, will you let us be part of that so that we can share it everywhere on our No Longer Ashamed? And then I've got a huge following, and maybe we can do an interview for my spotlight.
Absolutely. I intend on letting people know when it's getting ready to launch. Again, Lori, we've talked about this. All of the hangups I have around social media, I am like on the edge of getting on there, posting about it and letting people know leading up to the launch. So I do intend on letting people know in advance when it's going live, and then I will be sharing it with friends, with family, with current and previous clients, and just let them know, hey, this is a resource that I'm creating for you guys. Feel free to partake if you wish.
Awesome.
Love it. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Our loving Father, we are just so grateful that there is nothing in our story that surprises you. You are the author of our stories. You know every little detail that takes place between the covers of our lives. And we're so grateful that you're going to take everything that has happened to us, and you are going to use that for the benefit of others as we speak the honest truth to safe individuals about our story. We're going to connect with people. We're going to be honest. We're going to be vulnerable and find acceptance and find grace and find love and compassion. And we are just so thankful for your healing hand upon us on this journey. And you're not going to leave us where we are. You want us to be the men that you've created us to be. You want us to be the heroes of our stories, because that's who we are. We're not victims in your eyes. We're heroes. And we are so eternally grateful for your love, for your healing, your grace, and your acceptance.
Father, I thank you for all your blessings, especially for your presence in our lives, and the fact that you love that we are questioning about you, because we are wanting to get closer to you. and by questioning, by searching, by even struggling with you, we are learning how to be closer to you, Father, and learning how you want to be a part of our lives. Lord, I just pray that you would continue to bless Marcus and guide him in his journey and lead him to those that need to hear his story so that they could feel like they belong, that they aren't alone, that they are cared for, that they do matter. And Lord, I just pray that you would find those men to lead them to him and help them to guide others that are dealing with these things. And Lord, I just thank you for your continued persistence in Marcus's life. And I pray that you would continue to guide him with his wife and help him through that journey that he is committed to, and help him to be thankful for this journey, Lord. I just pray that you would guide and heal them in this, and that he would be able to be the mentor and also healer for his wife, but also would find healing in that relationship. In your name I pray.
And Father, I'm just so grateful that you brought Marcus into our life. Thank you for the good work he's doing and the people he's reaching. And we know this is a sensitive subject and people don't talk about it. And so thank you for the opportunity for us to talk about it here, for him to share his story. And I just pray for that person that is their heartstrings is being tugged at, that they would reach out and they would get the help and they would get the freedom that you have for them. I thank you so much that you're a loving God. And last week we talked about taking time to enjoy. And Lord, I just thank you for this week, for the blessings. And Kevin saw whales, and I house sat for my sister, and I saw woodpeckers and all kinds of fun things. And I just thank you that we can take these little moments and joy moments and just, enjoy you and be grateful for all that you've created. I thank you that you are a loving God, and thank you that you love it, that we work out our salvation, and that you give us the freedom to be who you created us to be. In your Son's holy name, amen.
Amen.